All right, I got a slight cold, but let us muscle through. So, let's get the obvious out of the way. Everybody's been waiting on me to do this. Now, I was on the Manosphere Mania with the roast, so we got all our jokes in and our digs in, and I told you so's in, so we can kind of get past that. I was listening to everything. I was going through listening to everybody's piece and see what they said and how things were forming in this YouTube Black experience that we call the Black sector of YouTube. And the closest person that I've seen, that I've heard, that actually describes this is the Solo TV 84, because he just basically shrugged his shoulders and said, this is typical behavior. And he's actually right. I'm going to go ahead and mention her name because, this is probably the last podcast I'm going to do on her. Can't swear that it's going to be true because YouTube, just like Cynthia G, is erratic. You can't predict those two entities. Solo TV 84 hit it on the head when he said that the wall's coming for her and she made a biological decision. In the last 3 years, we've seen a whole lot of Black celebrities, let alone Cynthia G, because she's a common person. Well, Black female celebrities that have money and power and access and can pick whatever man that they want within reason. Let's put it that way, within reason. Have done basically the same thing. The first person that comes to mind is Serena Williams. Serena Williams was 35. She gets pregnant by a white guy that she's dating. That after it comes out, all of a sudden they have to rush to get engaged. And he doesn't marry her until after the baby is born. And her story is not uncommon. There's about 5 or 6 more female celebrities, Black female celebrities, that did exactly the same thing. And those are just the Black ones. You add a couple of years, you have a lot of white ones doing the exact same things, except for they're going to IVF treatments and surrogates and that kind of stuff, trying to have a baby, trying to fulfill that biological function. So in that sense, Cynthia G is doing nothing more than fulfilling her biological functions, just like her sisters have. So now she can join her sisters in having a child, because she's, if I'm not mistaken, do believe she's the only one, if not the only one of her sisters that doesn't have a child. I could be mistaken. I don't know all of them, but I know several of her sisters already have children. And she's like one of the oldest children that don't have one. So what she did is typical. She's 34, she's about to be 35, and her clock is ticking. And since she doesn't have either the experience or the personality to find a husband, she picked the next closest thing in her mind, which is someone that would be a good father to her child, which is something we were talking about last night. That biology comes first, and your upbringing, your nurturing, or your socialization comes and informs your biology in which direction to go, what to pick from the menu. The menu is set by biology, but what to pick from the menu is set by your socialization. And from her background, you know her background. We've heard it right from her lips. It's been on display from day one on YouTube that she didn't have the happiest of childhood. Her mother's marriage wasn't the best. By her own admission, her father was dysfunctional and not there. And oftentimes when you have a child, especially a woman having a child, the child comes in as a stabilizing and healing purpose. Because in this day and time, regardless of what women say, you don't carry a child 9.5 months just on a whim. The child has to have a purpose. Now, does the child fulfill that purpose when it's born all the time? No. But there is a purpose when that woman is carrying that child. And the way that this happened, I do believe this was not unintentional. Not at 34. At 24, at 14, 24, you may be able to get away with unintentional. At 34, this was not unintentional. In fact, I was curious about her why it hasn't happened sooner. Because often, and I'm going to say it, damaged children do this earlier, like in their teens, because they seek to prove to themselves that their life experience as a child was not inevitable. In other words, if things could have been different in my family with my mother and father, my life as a child would have been better, would have been different. I could have become a different person. And oftentimes, parents live through their children to prove something to yourself, to prove something to the universe, that I, by the grace of God, by the grace of fate, could have been something different. We seek to make our psyches whole by having children, by having a replica of ourselves. Now, the other person that saw the same thing that I saw was Masante Bay, or the Bitter Truth Show, because we have similar backgrounds as far as the conscious community. And we have been in places and done things in the conscious community way before the internet was a thing, way before YouTube was even a dream in the creator's eye, way before YouTube was even possible. I remember them talking about YouTube in users meetings back in 1998, talking about the possibility of video on demand through the internet, but the infrastructure wasn't there yet. But I was in the meetings, I was in the background, I was sitting there chunking in my $5 to $10 and putting it in the bowl to hear people speak, to hear people discuss things. And I was doing it faithfully once or twice a week. And Bay was there busy running one of the biggest Black conscious bookstores in the country in Atlanta, and having these people that we revere right now, in his home, in his business, in his office. He saw these people as he grew up. So we know what a conscious speaker looks like. We know what they think. We know how they act. And we also know real ones from ones that are not genuine. Me and Bay said the same thing. We never had anything against Cynthia G because we never took her seriously. We know a genuine article when we see one. Why do I say that? I'll give you an example. 90% of people, of women in the conscious community, look more like Soul Alchemy than they do like Cynthia G. Now you imagine a whole bunch of people looking like Soul Alchemy sitting in a room, getting ready to talk or getting ready to listen to the speaker without a lot of makeup, with natural hair. Sometimes they have exotic designs. Imagine a Cynthia G walking into a building, into a room with a bunch of people, a bunch of women that look like Soul Alchemy. How long do you think that would last? How many women do you think would actually listen to her? Now, I don't know whether Soul Alchemy follows Cynthia G or not, but I can tell you just by looking at her, when I first saw her picture of her, I knew who Soul Alchemy was. I can tell you that she's a genuine article. So when I look at a Cynthia G and I don't see a Soul Alchemy, I know that these two things don't match. So since those two things did not match in my head, I never took her seriously. And until somebody asked me to make a video, I had never really listened to her, even though I had seen her. You can't be in this sector of YouTube and not run across videos by certain people. And she was one of them. So right then and there, I know that there's a disconnect between what she says and who she really is. And there's nothing that she's done since, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that has proved me wrong, right down to the events that just happened. A lot of people kept saying, oh, she's dangerous and people are following her and she's going to give out false messages and blah, 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 blah. That's going to happen anyway. This is YouTube. This is the world. If it's not a Cynthia G, it's going to be somebody else. And the people that gravitate to that type of energy are going to find a person to gravitate to, whether it's her or whoever. So I don't have an angst against the little girl. And for this instance, I'm going to call her a little girl because she could be my daughter. My son is 32. And I really didn't have children until my late 20s. So I could have easily been her father. Easily been her father. I knew the online persona that we call Cynthia G was a mask. Because not only have I grown up with damaged people that have been around me, because the Black community is full of damaged children, Because of the state that we're in and our dysfunction, we produce damaged people that have to be fixed. And her story is no different than hundreds of others that I've heard. Hell, lots of others that I've dated. So when people in the background, privately asked me about her, I said that from my assessment that she had, but even before I heard, I said she had a tough childhood and she had a dysfunctional family and she has damaged, I don't know whether it's abuse, she said that wasn't, but like everything else, regardless of what we think about what she feels or says about her father, anger that she has against him, I see something the opposite. I do believe she's a daddy's girl. So that hatred that she spews towards black men, that she spews towards men in general, I believe is love. I believe it's a little girl's love that's trying not to save her mother, but trying to save her father. Oftentimes men and women, black men and women, are trying to save their mother. But I have never believed that Cynthia G was a mama's girl. Her sisters are. For whatever reason, I believe Cynthia G loves her father deep down. And they always say there's a thin line between love and hate because she believes her father could have been different. I was listening to her story. Her story is actually worse than I thought. And it's probably worse than she's telling because I too come from a dysfunctional family. And the first thing of a child that comes from a dysfunctional family does is mitigate the damage. You can't tell everything. You can't be perfectly honest because to be perfectly honest would cut too deep. And a lot of things that have been ugly, you've wrapped up so tightly in a cocoon that you couldn't dig them out anyway. Half the stuff you forget. But regardless of how hard we try, the damage does seep out. And as damaged children, what we try to do is right that ship, fix ourselves. Angry Man talks about it all the time. He's traditional. Having children is one way to right that ship, is to be the father or be the parent that you didn't have, which not only fixes the generation, but also fixes your inner child. This is all it is. She's trying to fix her inner child. She's trying to fix herself through having this baby. And who does she pick to be the father? What she thinks is a better version of her father, a corrected version of her father. I was lucky as a man in my 20s. A lot of things got fixed in me is because I picked an older woman that was what I thought was a better version of my mother. I dated her on and off for about 5 or 6 years, but she was a better version of my mother. She fixed a lot of things in me that was broken, that my mother didn't give me. The ability to be affectionate, the ability to know that a woman could love you for yourself, to know how a woman thinks, how a mother thinks towards her children. And after I finished dating this woman, I didn't see my mother as this God with clay feet that could have done something different. I saw my mother as human. Because after that, I didn't need my mother's approval. I didn't need my mother's attention. I didn't need my mother to fix something that was broken in me. So I was able to do that without having a child. So by the time my children came along, I could give them a whole parent. Fortunately, I could. And in spite of the person that I did have children with, who had her own issues, I could raise normal, healthy, happy children, which in spite of all the other things that are going on around, they are whole, healthy, happy children, happy adults, probably too happy. That's probably the issue that they're having. They wanted to remain children, but that's another story. So when I did the video on damaged women, damaged people, and telling my guys, certain of my guys to stay away from damaged people, everybody knew who I was talking about. So everybody ragging on Cynthia, ragging on her experience, probably never understood her anyway. I did. And sometimes when you're going through a verbal battle back and forth. You take things personally. You take a dislike, and I never disliked her, who the real Cynthia G is. Now, I don't like her online persona. For whatever reason, she does it. And when you're online, you can't get through the persona to the real person. And I'm sure she didn't like me either. Probably because I'm too much like her father, in a sense, is that I dismiss her. And I am dismissive of her, which is probably closer to how her father treats her, and still does. Like I said, this is probably the last video I'm going to do on her, because as Cynthia G, the person, I don't dislike her. I'm not insensitive to her and insensitive to her plight, because everybody's running around trying to feel sorry for her. And I don't know why. She's 34. This is her attempt to heal herself. This is her attempt to self-medicate. Now, she may be embarrassed. And I say maybe because you don't pick another popular YouTuber to have a baby by and think that this is not going to get out, because it will, and it has. She made a decision. She made a conscious decision to pick the person that she picked for her own logical reasons. It seems illogical to us, but if you look at her background, who else could she have picked? Or what type of man could she have picked? Anybody that could read the tea leaves, this was obvious. But one thing I am happy about, and she did prove me wrong, and I will say that, is that I'm glad that it was a black man. So in that one sense, Miss Green, you have proven me wrong. And I humbly take that L. And I hope that this baby and the needs of this baby will correct what's wrong in you. Will give you the ability to connect people. Hopefully it's a boy. And maybe through that boy, you can finally learn to love men and learn to love black men. I remember the movie Gandhi, when the Islamics and the Hindus had to separate into Pakistan and India. And there was all this violence. And Gandhi went on a fast. I think he fasted for like 2.5 months, almost to death. And one of the protesters, a Hindu, broke into his compound and confronted Gandhi and threw him a piece of bread. And he said, "I'm going to hell, but I'm not going to have your soul on my conscience." And Gandhi asked him why. And the man said he took an Islamic boy about 5 years old and smashed his head with a stone. And since he committed such an unpardonable sin, he knew that his soul was damned and he would go to hell. But he wasn't going to go to hell with Gandhi's soul on his conscience. So Gandhi, the master, elegantly told him, he said, "I know a way out for both of us." And the man asked him how. He said, "Find a Muslim boy about 5 years old, make him your son, and don't raise him as a Hindu, raise him as a Muslim." Why did Gandhi say that? If you raise something that you love to be something that you formerly hated, you will learn to love and appreciate that thing that you've hated. It will change your soul, change your mind, and change your being, and heal your conscience and heal your soul. So that I hope that this is a boy. I hope that she embraces this boy and loves this boy and raises it to be the black man, the powerful black man that she wants. And in doing so, she can love and appreciate black maleness, the black maleness that she now despises or says that she does. And finally, after doing that, she can heal herself, heal her soul, and make herself whole. That's all I got for this one, folks. It might not be the video that you wanted, but this is the video that I have. So I'm going to drop the mic and let that be that. Peace out and blessings.